Views and opinions expressed on the following program are those of the hosts and guests, and not necessarily those of the staff or management of alltalkradio.net.
Mother Nature has the answer to all the things we need. It is in the purest waters which flow out to the sea. You will find it on the prairies, in the rich and fertile lands, and you will find abundance upon the desert sands. As we seek the magic potion that will help regain our youth, the chemistry of progress and its self-polluted truth had crept into our lives, infecting everything in sight. It took 100 years, but we finally got it right.
Welcome to another fabulous week here at Zenus Global. And I am really, truly excited about this evening because we have with us the author of Life or Grave Danger, co-founder and CEO, Doug Whitfield. And Doug, I have to tell you, I read the book once. I went back and started skimming through it again. I was pretty amazed. And I know one of your themes that you really like to talk about is creating balance. And as I was going through this process, I'm like, there's so many different things out there. There's so much noise in terms about what you should do and how you should do it. And I know there has to be something simplistic and easy for us to understand what it is that we can do to start to create some balance. And I know we have a lot to do with nutrition and those kinds of things, but you're the expert. This is absolutely, I think everybody should have a copy of this book because, number one, it gives you some of the real basics and breaks through a lot of those myths and misinformation out there. So enough from me. Let's get with you.
Terrific, Randy. Well, thank you. Well, when we talk about balance, and balance is a main part of our overall philosophy, and you've heard me talk about it quite a bit because everything in nature is predicated on balance. And even if you look at any of these insidious degenerative or chronic conditions that are so common nowadays with the cancer, lupus and all these severe conditions, are all the result of imbalance. Disease itself, if you look at the word dis-ease, if you can restore balance in the system, you can eliminate the dis-ease. And so everything in nature is predicated on balance. And in the book, one of the balance conditions that I highlight is really has to do with pH balance. And the reason I'll talk about that briefly is because, again, there's a lot of misinformation being disseminated out there. There's probably more misinformation in the natural health arena than there is even in conventional medicine. We all know that drugs are bad, that prescription medication, without exception, they're all toxic to the body. That's why we get side effects. But getting back to pH, a lot of times people say, well, you need to be alkaline. The body needs to be alkaline. And it's only half the truth. They're not totally wrong, but they're 50% wrong because acidity in the body is equally important. Because we can talk about alkaline water and alkaline water machines and that, and there's people out there that derive a pretty good income from the sale of these things. And the unfortunate part is that the amount of benefit that you ever get from drinking alkaline water, if there's any benefit, could easily be outweighed by the damage that you're doing. Let me suggest this. First off, the concept of the idea that viruses and pathogens can only thrive in a acidic environment is fictitious. It's just flat out and not factual. You take certain viruses, E. coli and things, the most common, actually thrive in an alkaline environment. The whole concept of of acid reflux. Okay, and of course that's a whole industry unto itself, getting rid of acid reflux. 99% of the time it's caused from lack of acid in the body, not too much acid.
Okay.
Okay, let me explain the reason why. First off, acidity is equally important to the body because hydrochloric acid plays a major role in two things. Number one, helping us to digest our food and preventing pathogens from getting into the body. Our skin is acidic to prevent airborne pathogens from getting through the skin, which is the largest organ in the body. So lacking acid, we would be bombarded with all kinds of microorganisms and bacteria and etc. And so the point I'm trying to make is that a lot of the foods that we eat, from not having enough acid, are not properly broken down. Okay, so the digestion isn't complete. The food then moves from an acidic environment to an alkaline environment in the gut. In an alkaline environment, because it's not totally digested, because of the lack of the acid, it ferments, and as it ferments, it builds up gas. As it builds up gas, it starts to put pressure on muscles called the sphincter. When that muscle tires, as muscles tend to do, okay, then it releases the gas. The gas runs up the esophagus, carrying traces of hydrochloric acid with it. Thus, you get your acid reflux. So the best way to eliminate acid reflux, again in 99% of the cases, is to go to your local health food store and buy some hydrochloric acid pills, because and it's part of the natural aging process. As we mature, as we mature, the body starts to decrease its production of hydrochloric acid. So you'll find that acid reflux is more prevalent amongst people that have had a few birthdays. And so, because we're just not making enough of it. So consequently, by taking HCl, we can help the body and assist it in restoring that part of the balance.
Okay, well, that's interesting because as you were talking about that, it brought me to another subject, which is kind of a little bit off base, but I know you can talk about anything, so it doesn't really matter. I was looking at a HBO show, and it was a 3-part series, and it was talking about obesity in America and the food industry, and really not understanding what's in the food. And as you were talking about food digesting and those types of things, what role does it play when you don't really have the proper, what I call, education, right? What you just told me makes perfect sense, but you listen to all these other stories. So how do you determine? So how would you really know what is it that you should be putting into your body?
Well, again, that's a great point, and it goes right back to our basic philosophy. Of course, my role, I believe, is as a disciple. I've been blessed insofar as that I've been able to attract some wonderful mentors in my life, and some of the most brilliant scientists, brilliant doctors, brilliant teachers.
Okay.
And I will, in blowing my own horn, tooting my own horn, say that I've been a good student. So I've paid attention because I've had a passion for it, and I've been able to help put some of the pieces together that just all of a sudden are totally logical. And one of the philosophies, of course, that everything's predicated on is our philosophy of complete, whole, functional food. And again, and I've talked about this at a lot of lengths, is that our bodies are perfect in how they were created. We were created in our Creator's image, and there were no mistakes made. Matter of fact, each of us is born, come into this world with a blueprint of exactly how we're supposed to be. So, our body shape and size and scope, and and it's only through a lifestyle of excesses and abuses do we change that profile. Okay, it's because nowadays, especially in a capitalistic society where money becomes our god, so you've got big business that's looking at cheaper ways of manufacturing food, and what they call food, which really isn't food at all, and so we're looking at fast food, bleached sugars, starches, all these things that are not recognized by the body's wisdom as being food. So most of it is never processed properly. It's left to accumulate in the colon or the bowel, where it starts to rot and decay, putrefies, and it's only when the body starts absorbing the poisons that we create conditions. Now, interesting enough, the body has some miracle components that address even this.
Yes.
And so what happens is when the body sees that we're starting to absorb these poisons where they could possibly get into the body where they can do irreparable damage, it wants to protect itself, so it starts to coat the gut wall with mucus.
Okay.
And as it coats that gut wall, that prevents the absorption of the poisons. However, there is a price to pay for that. There's a catch-22. And because now we've coated that gut wall, we can no longer absorb the nutrients that the cells need to sustain healthy, vigorous, energetic life.
Okay.
And so the cells that are starved for nutrition now are constantly sending signals to the brain saying, I'm hungry, I'm hungry. Well, it's not food they're looking for, it's nutrition that they're looking for. So we get into this syndrome that we call overfed, undernourished.
Right, okay.
So we're constantly hungry, we're eating, but because the nutrients aren't being able to get to the cells where they're needed, we start to accumulate waste and put on weight. Okay.
Wow.
So that's another thing that we've been able to address through our detoxification program,
Right.
where we can actually clean the gut wall,
Okay.
eliminate the poisons and the toxins that have accumulated at the same time. Thus, we put the body in a better posture so it can more effectively absorb nutrients and start to restore that balance again in the system.
Wow, that, it's amazing because when you look at where we are today, that 2/3 of our population are considered obese or overweight. And one of the things that I really noticed, the first chapter in your book really hit home for me, and that was, how do we know what's good for us? So, tell us, how do we know?
Well, first off, most of our diet is, and we talked about acid-alkaline balance and how critical it is. Well, understand one thing. When the body's acidic, typically in the daytime,
Right.
okay, it needs to be, because everything in life, and we're chemical, electrical beings, our whole life force is made up of enzymes. Enzymes, everything that we do, every function of living, our breathing, our thinking, our healing, is a function of enzymes. Every cell in the body, billions of cells, their function is to produce enzymes. They're enzyme factories. Enzymes work in one of two ways. And the way that an enzyme functions or works is totally dependent on the pH of its environment. Okay? So in the daytime, when we're active and we need energy, the body, thus, at a cellular level, is more acidic. Needs to be, because in an acid environment, the function of enzymes is to create energy.
Okay.
Okay, so it has to be acidic. In an acidic environment, the way that the enzymes create energy is it takes food molecules from food that we're eating, and it starts to break down those molecules and the chains that hold them together. This creates what they call fission, compared to be maybe like splitting of an atom.
Ah.
So all of this is going on thousands of times a second. All these little bombs going off, this fission being created, and that's the electrical energy that the body produces for its functions. But you see, as it's breaking down these food molecules, much of the food molecules are made up of minerals and trace minerals, which are alkaline in nature, such as potassium. It dumps these alkaline minerals, okay, into the biochemical pool of the body. So over the course of the day, the body starts to shift to a more alkaline environment. Okay? So we go through this shift. Now, it's critical to know that when we start to shift to an alkaline, that's when we start to tire. The body starts to slow down. It no longer needs energy, so it no longer creates energy. And in an alkaline environment, the function of an enzyme now is to repair, to heal, and it rebuilds all the cells that have been burnt out during the course of the day's activity. So all healing is done in an alkaline environment. So at night, that's when our body, when we're resting,
Right.
and all of our healing takes place. and preparing the body. So the enzymes then start rebuilding the cells, much like a bricklayer, brick on brick, and it rebuilds all the damage that the cells have been burned out during the course of the day, preparing the body for the next day's activities.
Well, you know what, this is amazing to me, and I think one of the things that I look at is, I remember, and this was a little while ago, maybe a couple of years ago, whenever, and before watching some of these things and really getting educated as to what's possible, I would believe what I would see on the shelves as I was walking through the store or whatever, and and everything looks good, it's healthy, right colors, blah blah blah. And then once you start to learn and you start to read what's going into your body, it's like, oh my God, why would I ever even want to put this in my body? And I know one of your passions, which I enjoy, especially here, is really having a health center where people can come and get educated and have the resources and the supports and the right products. I'd like for you to share, because I think this is an amazing piece that most people don't get about what goes on. I'd like for you to share how you see Zenus Global Health, this overall mission of really putting people, really delivering people away from the stress and not having the balance and not having the right products and not even having all of the financial needs that they want from not having the proper education. So how do you see Zenus Global Health in this environment really supporting people?
Well, that's a good question. Here's what I believe. My belief is that everything has to come from education.
Yes.
Okay. It's, if you go back, and we watched a film here last week, and the homeopaths versus the allopaths, the empirics,
Right.
the early homeopaths, and of course, and it was through money that the path of modern day medicine went. And I have no argument with doctors. They spend a lot of their life, and most of them get into becoming therapists because of a true passion for wanting to help others.
Right.
And the unfortunate thing is that they go to medical schools that have been funded by the pharmaceutical companies. The curriculum being taught is put together by the drug companies because they're the ones that financially support and create the medical schools. Most of the drugs, the pharmaceutical drugs, okay, are tested and approved. Okay, they maybe get approved by regulation and the regulators, but all the studies are done by the drug companies themselves. And if you look at their testing procedures, almost without exception, they're totally skewed so that the end result, showing the efficacy of the drugs, is predicated on bogus information.
Wow.
Okay, every prescription drug. My real passion is against the drug companies.
Okay.
Not against doctors. Against every prescription medication, without exception, is toxic to the human body. My belief is that every degenerative and chronic condition is the result of poisons. Okay, we've been taught, we go to school and we're given misinformation there. Again, we've been taught, thank you to Louis Pasteur, that it's microbes, germs, viruses, pathogens that cause disease. And that just factually is not true.
Okay.
It's inaccurate and misinformation. Viruses and pathogens, microbes, are living entities, and they're looking for a food source. Their food source typically is poisons. So when you've got a host that's inundated with poisons that can offer a nice warm, dark, moist location with a good food source, then you become a prime candidate to attract these pathogens, microbes, germs, viruses into your body.
Okay.
If you're void of poisons, then it's what you create, what we call host resistance. Okay, so you don't have all the things that are going to attract. That's why some people can go into, two people can go into the same environment. One will get, sick, and the other one doesn't. It's through host resistance. Okay, so anyways, all of these drugs that we take contribute to disease because they're toxic in nature, borne out by the fact that every prescription drug has a side effect. Those side effects are nothing more than the body's unique wisdom telling us that it's not in harmony with our needs. Okay, but we choose to ignore the body's symptoms, okay, and we take the drugs. So every time you take one of those drugs, the drugs can't heal or cure anything. They can simply mask a symptom and cause damage to an organ.
Okay.
So they damage and compromise the integrity of things like the liver, for example, which is the laboratory of life. It's the chief functioning organ in the body. It's responsible for 40% of the elimination of poisons.
Wow. So it sounds like what you're telling me is, because I know every time I listen to one of those commercials, right, and it just talks about the side effects, the side effects seem to be worse than what you could actually be suffering from when they define it. How can that even be logical? How can they get away with that? How does that make sense? I don't get it.
Well, you know what? You know, it's we're so conditioned to bow in front of the altars of science, okay? And it's been pounded into us from early school age on. And so we get to, and then you get somebody that's in a life-threatening situation,
right.
and their doctor says, if you don't follow my protocol, you're going to die. So all of a sudden there's a tremendous fear factor.
Mm-hmm.
Now the fear, because poisons are also created by mindsets. So
Yes.
when we talk about poisons being the cause of disease, all that's doing is feeding the disease, because you've got poisons can be brought on from environmental issues. It can be brought on from, you know, the foods that we're eating, because most of us are eating a lot of denatured foods anyways, you know, that are no longer in harmony with
Right.
the cell's needs. And then one of the chief culprits, aside from the pesticides, fungicides, algicides, pesticides, all these other sides, are mindsets: anger, fear, anxiety, worry, stress. All these things also compromise the body's immune system. Okay, they compromise the integrity of the adrenals, for example. So now you put the body in a posture where it can more effectively trigger one of these conditions.
Well, I was really amazed when we were watching that movie last week of how just the amount of pressure that was put on people that had actual, you know, other natural remedies to situations, and just how it was shut down, how these people were put in jail, and just it still amazes me.
Well, welcome to the free world.
Yeah, it doesn't
you know,
feel so free
yeah,
though.
I just don't know what we're free from. But,
exactly.
you know, it's in a capitalistic society. It's the rule is the golden rule, and the golden rule is he who has the gold gets to make the rules. You know, and it's unfortunate, but dollars, it seems, in a capitalistic society take precedent over everything. The drug companies do not have your well-being at heart. I can assure you that. I promise you, Randy, they don't care.
Right.
Okay, their function is entirely to increase the bottom line for their investors, for their shareholders. That's what their function is, and that's all they're concerned with, at any cost.
Okay.
So you getting better isn't going to support, you know, their long-term agenda. They don't necessarily want you to die. But of course, if you weren't sick, you wouldn't be taking their drugs. Okay. Matter of fact, they even create man-made diseases. They create man-made diseases. So I'll give you an example. A number of years ago, drug companies developed statin drugs like Lipitor, Zocor,
Right.
and they were actually developed for something totally unrelated to what they're used for. But they found that they were totally ineffective at what they were testing them for. But during their studies, they found that they were good at lowering cholesterol. Well, up until that time, high cholesterol was never an issue. Okay, so they created disease. I call it cholesterolphobia. Okay, and it works like this. So you see, I understand that cholesterol comes in two forms. Number one, we get it in our diet, and the liver produces it.
Right.
The liver also monitors our cholesterol levels. So if we're not getting enough cholesterol in our diet, it produces more, the liver.
Okay.
If we're getting too much, it reduces its production. Okay? What cholesterol is a healing agent, and it's a natural anti-inflammatory. Anytime you've got elevated cholesterol levels, it's usually due to an inflammatory condition in the body.
Okay.
That could be brought on from colitis, could be brought on from bursitis, arthritis. These are all inflammatory conditions. But any type of inflammation will elevate cholesterol levels. Okay, without cholesterol in your body, you'd be dead in
Okay.
less than a heartbeat.
Wow.
So we need cholesterol, but it's only now it's the doctors, they're trained to try and get everybody on these statin drugs, and you've got all these side effects associated. Did you know that we're losing almost 300,000 people annually to the adverse side effects of drugs in
Wow.
North America? I want you to think about that. Almost 300,000. We lost 10% of that in 9/11.
Wow.
10%, and those will go down in the history books forever.
Right.
We'll be cognizant of the 3,000 people we lost in 9/11, and yet we can lose 300,000 every year just to the side effects, adverse side effects with these toxic, insidiously toxic drugs, and nobody says anything.
Well, I really do believe that we have a responsibility to educate people. That's one of the things that I love about the mission that we have here, and that is through our membership and through our members of really making sure they understand all the possibilities. And again, I don't want to go into a whole lot of detail, but I really like for you to tell us just a little bit about how the products actually work within the body to support what we're talking about here, because there has to be, we can talk about the problems all we want, but what are the solutions? What can we do that we don't have to then depend on these medications for having our bodies properly balanced?
Well, again, and that's that we can go back to a question that you asked previously, and again, it's part of our whole philosophy. When we were created, we were given this perfect piece of equipment, but it's through a lifestyle of excesses and abuses that we haven't been good stewards
Right.
of that which we were given. And if you go back to the father of medicine, which was Hippocrates, he made a statement which is, I believe, totally factual, and that's, let food be your medicine and let medicine be your food. And they talk about there's no science behind what we do. Well, let me tell you that there's far more science, than in natural medicine and food than there ever is in drugs. Drugs are something that are fairly modern in nature when you go back to the
Right.
beginning of time. And so, you see, nature has a way of synergistically blending in food all the nutrients that are in harmony with what the body needs to afford repair, and that, so it's totally in harmony with the cell's needs. Now, drugs, for example, the body has a lot of protective mechanisms, and I talked about first off the gut wall that
Right.
protects the poisons from being absorbed. Okay, there's a mechanism in there that keeps it, because anything that's totally natural and complete has a certain spin, electrical spin.
Okay.
Okay, anything that's unnatural has an opposite spin. So drug companies can turn around and take these drugs and put something natural, coat them to trick the body to get it in the bloodstream. And so they can do a blood test and say, oh yeah, you've got this in your blood, that in your blood, so you're getting, However, the cells are much more rigid, and they're
Okay.
demanding the exact credentials of every molecule of food that comes its way. If it's not complete and in total harmony with its needs, there's no way that it's going to get into that cell.
Okay.
Okay? So, and when we talk about these food molecules, those are molecules of food, of natural food, fruits, vegetables, that are complete, so that they've got the right combination of enzymes, coenzymes, minerals, trace minerals, vitamins, proteins, essential fatty acids, all of these things, in harmony, so the cells recognize it as being food and can utilize it.
Okay, so then I know that the products that Zenus offers are whole plant-based foods. Tell us how, I know you can go into a lot, but tell us how the Optimum Detox, which I know is pretty much the flagship product, but that works inside the body to facilitate what we're talking about here today.
Well, the Optimum Detox is our flagship product, and it's a whole food extraction from a desert plant called the Mojave yucca. Its technical name is the Shidagri yucca, And it's critical that you know the type, because there's 50 different types of yucca out there, but there's only a handful that have any value from a therapeutic perspective, and 3 of them are native to the southwest of the United States. There's the baccata, brevifolia, and shedagrin. I've worked with all of them, and I've worked with these plants now for over 30 years.
Wow.
The Mojave, or the shedagri yucca or yucca, is unique in its characteristics. You see, nature, it grows in the Mojave Desert. And so to understand, the Mojave Desert is arguably the most stressful environment anywhere on the planet. It's subject to the highest recorded temperature ever in history on this planet.
Wow.
You've got freezing weather in the wintertime. My wife and I have been there many times, and we've often in the wintertime been there to see as much as 1.5 feet of snow in the Mojave Desert. You've also got wind, you've got insect attacks, you've got flash floods, you've got drought conditions. So all these, the plant might not even see water for a year or 2 years, and yet this particular plant, because of the constituents that nature's endowed it with, doesn't just survive these stressful conditions, but it actually thrives and flourishes. And one of the early botanists, Dr. John Yale, that did the early studies on the Mojave yucca, discovered that the other plants that grow in the Mojave Desert owe their very existence to this plant, because it shares its values with the other plants.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay, let me explain how it works, because it doesn't matter that it works in the desert. It works anywhere where there's life.
Oh.
Okay, so it's one of nature's, and maybe the very purest and most potent adaptogen, being able to restore balance in an environment where there's an imbalance.
Okay.
So we get back to the balance.
Right.
For example, we talked about the denatured food and everything. Well, nature's endowed this plant with an abundance of what they call phytosterols. Okay? So the phytosterols, their function is that of a catalyst or an accelerator to aerobic or friendly bacteria cultures. So in the case of the gut, where we've got this accumulation of poisons due to the foods that we're eating and this accumulation of waste, so now what these phytosterols in the Optum Detox motivate the aerobic bacteria in the gut, causing them to come forth in greater numbers, so they'll produce up to 60,000 times more enzymes.
Wow.
Now the enzymes, their function now is to break down this solid waste into tiny particles, make it easy for the body to eliminate.
Wow. So really, in reality, again, and I'm not trying to say how can I phrase this so it doesn't, I'm not trying to make claims or say what it can do, but from what I understand about obesity and the things that we're putting into our body, it seems like the Optimum Detox can assist in making sure that we're getting the proper nutrition. Would that be?
It'll assist. When you see how complete the Optimum Detox is, why it's our flagship product, it's a product unlike anything I've ever seen in my life, and I've been at this for a long time. There's lots of great products out there. As an adaptogen, though, it'll even support other good products. But as a standalone, there's nothing quite like it, because it's loaded with nutrition, plus it's got these unique characteristics. See, the phytosterols, not only they motivate the friendly flora, so it gets rid of these poisons. Now, of course, I talked about the body's unique ability to protect itself, its wisdom, and it coats the gut wall with mucus. Well, these the microorganisms produce the enzymes that break down the solid waste, but it also will break down that mucus on the gut wall. It has another substance in it, the yucca, the Mojave yucca, called saponins. Saponins are actually soap molecules. Okay, soap is a surfactant or a wetting agent. A wetting agent is a substance that's able to increase the permeability of a cell wall of water to more readily absorb oxygen. Makes water wetter. Okay. So how does this benefit? Well, again, it assists the enzymes in being able to cleanse the gut wall. So we get rid of the cause of most of our degenerative conditions that start in the gut. Life and death begins in the colon. But it also puts the body in a better posture, so now it can start to absorb nutrients that the cells need.
Okay. Well, what we're getting, we got a few more minutes, and one of the things that if you could talk about, because again, think that this is a great book, and I know we're going to go into more detail about the book as we move through different shows and different things that we're doing. But one of the things that I noticed in the book was a certain pattern of how, again, each chapter that you read, you gain more and more knowledge and education about what is right for you and your body. And I know you've done the research, you've done this for years. If you had to put it in a synopsis and you said, okay, here's what I know we haven't even talked about this, but here's what, if you really wanted to reduce stress, really put your life into balance, really get things where you're feeling good about yourself and who you are, what things would you suggest that would be good for someone to do in their life to accomplish that?
Well, first thing would be buy the book.
Right. Okay. That's
Okay,
a good. That's a good one.
The book is an accumulation of wisdom that I've gleaned from mentors. Okay, and it was over a period of years that you can put the pieces together.
Yeah.
So it's pure logic. Okay, people can only make good choices, intelligent, logical choices, predicated on having good information.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've got skewed information, you've
Yes.
got misinformation, you're not in a position to be able to make good choices. So the reason for the book, and again, earlier I mentioned that that stress and that can also accumulate poisons. One of the worst things, and of course we deal a lot with, for example, cancer patients.
Yes.
And so often, and I'm sure that you've seen this in your lifetime, and most people have, where a loved one or somebody got cancer, acquired cancer, and they say, well, it's hard to believe that they would get cancer because they lived a healthy lifestyle. They might have even been a vegetarian, or vegan, but they got cancer. So how do you account for that? Well, see, poisons come in a lot of different ways, as we talked about. They can come from mindsets. They can come from
Yes.
fear. And so the minute somebody, so it could have been triggered by trauma in the family or trauma at work or stress at work. It could be the triggering device. It could be from an environmental issue. So there's a whole host of different things that could contribute. And as a result of that, the Optimum Detox, again, helps to eliminate all these. It works
Okay.
on the adrenals, so it makes for and because it's got all these, because we didn't talk about all the minerals and trace minerals,
Right.
and it's got zinc, copper, magnesium, manganese, potassium, all these minerals that go to addressing the adrenals and supporting the adrenals. Because at the end of the day, the adrenals, especially for women at a certain point in time, even become their chief organ of manufacturing hormones. But it also controls and monitors all the chemistry in the body. And so it's those fears in that. And when your doctor comes to you and says, you've got cancer, well, immediate thing is that it feeds into the disease because there's a fear factor. People,
Right.
when you hear cancer, you think death, dying, and so it feeds into it. It's only through education, and like the book, for example, that all of a sudden it makes you more cognizant of
Yes.
everything that's taking place, so you can reduce or eliminate the fear factor. It also gives you so many more avenues and choices you can take in order to address those challenges as they come along.
So what you're saying is really what I think makes perfect sense. Is it gives you the ability to really make better choices, because the information that most of us are getting is really bogus. I mean, it's I think it's better, and we're getting better and better at it now. People are much more aware than we were in the past. They're much more conscious of what we're putting into our bodies and the things that we really learn and we know. And one of the things that I always say, people talk about being on missions and doing certain things. The one thing I love about what we do here and how the work is done is that it's really backed up by the products. And one important thing that I want to say, and this is not a pitch, this is just reality. When you look at the fact that someone and a member of our business, a member of our family, literally can have 6 bottles of Optimum Detox shipped to their home for $100, which includes shipping and handling. It shows not only are we talking the message, but we're also delivering it based in a way that everybody can share in that. Just give us a touch on that concept and why you set it up that way, where it's so readily available for anybody in their families to really have access to these products.
And that includes shipping anywhere in the world.
In the world,
In
that's
the world,
right.
and it could be 6 bottles. Could be 6 bottles of anything that we
Right.
make because we have price parity in all of our products. Well, understand, for both my wife and I, we're the founders. We were brought together through cancer. I lost my mom to cancer December 17th, 1992. I met my wife the following year because she was losing her mom to cancer in 1993.
Okay.
I lived in Vancouver, Canada at the time. She lived in Palm Springs at the time. We met in Toronto where her mom lived. I was lecturing out there. Her mom was in the hospital. She was up there to administer her mom. She had heard of our products. I had a warehouse there, so we were shipping product from our warehouse, having it hand delivered to the hospital for her mom.
Okay.
She came to one of my lectures to learn more about our products. She ended up learning more than she expected.
That's it, right?
And we saw that we had a mission bigger than the both of us, and
Okay.
so we devoted our lives to trying to create products and assist people and educate people so that they can make better health choices and avoid a lot of the fallout from these insidious, degenerative, and chronic conditions.
Well, Doug, I just really want to thank you and Christina for, putting it all together. Making the necessary sacrifices. Doing, because you don't have to do this, right? But you made it a choice to do this, to educate people. And I would say to our members as well, to ensure to connect and go to our website www.zenusglobalhealth.com. Go to our YouTube channel. Look at some of the other shows. See what's going on. Get a real feel for what's possible. So, Doug, in closing, I want to leave it to you for any last thoughts, anything that you want to leave the audience with restoring balance, whatever. It's open field day for you.
Well, I'd just like to point out one thing, and because I told you that cancer is one of the main things. When you start looking at cancer, for 100 years now, we've used exactly the same modalities. That's the only profession in the world that nothing's changed. Chemotherapy, radiation, and surgery. Matter of fact, the state of California has passed laws, state law, saying that a medical doctor there is creating a felony if he uses anything other than those modalities.
Wow.
Now, when you go back to the turn of the century, not this last century, but the century before, and you look at how the cancer rate has gone up, and in, I think it was the 50s when Congress declared war on cancer.
Right.
At that time, it was like 1 out of 8 or 1 out of 10 people was deemed were going to get cancer. Okay. Now it's 1 out of 3, with 50% of them dying. And again, using exactly the same modalities. So all they've done is proven successfully that these don't work. They don't work. And of course, when you look at the logic, 2 out of the 3 are known carcinogens. Chemotherapy and radiation are amongst the most insidious toxins that you can put into the body. And you understand that drugs can't heal, doctors can't heal, our products can't heal. Only the body has the wisdom and the ability to heal. That was given to us by our Creator. So why would you compromise the only thing that's capable of healing by adding in the things that cause the condition?
Well, Doug, I just want to thank you for taking your time. I know your schedule is jammed, but really appreciate you taking the time with us today. And I want to thank everybody for joining in and listening to us and going through. So remember to go to www.zenusglobalhealth.com, click the YouTube button, look at some of the shows, and we look forward to seeing you. Those of you who are local here in Las Vegas, we look forward to seeing you on Thursday evening, 6:30, for our presentation. Take care, everybody, and see you next week.
Mother Nature has the answer to all the things we need. It is in the purest waters which flow out to the sea. You